Metabolic flexibility is simply just, I like to say, it's the ability to just use the full spectrum of your metabolism efficiently. So you're able to use fat and ketones as a fuel source when it's warranted, but you're also able to use glucose and carbs when it's warranted as well. So that is kind of like the simple definition. And the biggest thing is being able to efficiently, like we talked about, efficiently shift back and forth depending on what you're doing. Is the biggest thing here with metabolic flexibility, just being able to, like I said, if you're sitting at your desk all day, like, can you shift into using fat for fuel and potentially using ketones for fuel, versus if you're exercising, like, can you use glucose and carbs for fuel efficiently? So that's kind of like the simplest way to define it. And then just like I mentioned, our ancestors are metabolically flexible by necessity. They were. So it's kind of thinking back to that practicality side of things. Like, they didn't have food available all the time. So they had to be metabolically flexible to be able to go through periods of fasting and things like that. So it's kind of just thinking back to that in a practical standpoint. I like to, again, put it back to, okay, where are you coming from? Like, where are you at on those sides of the spectrum? Like, are you coming from, like I said, a point where you have never really implemented any type of lower carb protocol into your life? You've never gotten into a state of ketosis since you've been a baby, right? Are you coming from that area? And people refer to this as being like a complete sugar burner, right? Where they're just so, reliant on carbohydrates for fuel, maybe, and this is obviously dependent on like your activity level as well. So if you are someone who's sedentary and you're not really that active, and you are having like blood sugar dysregulation, and you're not able to, you can't fast at all, right? Like, you just have to eat every few hours, like you're, have that afternoon slump, all of that stuff. Like, if you're on that side of the spectrum versus if you're on the other side of the spectrum, which people don't talk about a lot, is what I mentioned with being keto for so long, right? And being low carb for so long that their body is now efficiently gone, or not efficiently using carbohydrates as fuel, because we know that our bodies are going to adapt to whatever we're doing, right? So if you have been consuming a low carb ketogenic diet for a long period of time, your body is going to be like, hey, you're not bringing carbs in anymore, so I don't really need to have these, enzymes that are upregulated to digest those carbs and absorb them. I don't really need the machinery to stick around to be able to utilize those efficiently, because you're just not giving them to me. It's kind of this the other end as well. So it's just realizing that our body adapts to those different things. So with being metabolically flexible, you're able to kind of use these different fuels when they're warranted, like I mentioned, but there's no like set, like, hey, you're metabolically flexible because you did this or you did that. There's different things to look at. And I would say that like there's some ways to objectively measure if you're metabolically flexible and subjectively measure them.